final part of our decade retrospectives in the world of WrestleMania as we move on to WrestleMania 31 to today. Now, this decade is a little abbreviated because it won't include WrestleMania 40 as it hasn't happened yet. So it'll be WrestleMania 31 through WrestleMania 39. This should be the easiest one to retrospect because you shouldn't have to look any of this up. We watched this all live. We watched it all basically free on streaming services. We watched it all looking exactly the way we do now. So there's no, when I was a kid or back in the day, I think I probably had the same beard, the same haircut, probably the same shirt at the start of this decade as I do now. And that's what happens when you get older. It's crazy to say. I remember when old people used to say, I have socks older than you. And now I can say, I indeed, if you're 10 years old, have socks older than you. So it's crazy to say. But WrestleMania 31 kicked off this decade, right? WrestleMania 30 started the streaming version of the decade, and 31 we move on. As a lot of people call it, WrestleMania, the play button. And I guess one theme that's stuck with this WrestleMania decade was the lack of a number. Now, we all know WrestleMania 40, we got the Roman numerals back, and I think that's probably just for the sake of it being the Monumental 40. But 28 was one of the last ones we saw with a Roman numeral every single year. And then 29, it just had the Empire State Building. And then 30, because of the anniversary, brought the Roman numeral number back. But since 31, all the way up until where we are today, there hasn't been any Roman numerals. So WrestleMania, the play button, WrestleMania, the Dallas Star, WrestleMania, the Sun, the Orlando Sun, WrestleMania, the Crown, WrestleMania, the Fleur de Lis for New Orleans, WrestleMania, the Statue of Liberty Crown, WrestleMania, the Buccaneers flag, WrestleMania, the Buccaneers flag again, but this time with skull and bones, WrestleMania star again, bigger star, and WrestleMania goes Hollywood. Those are all your logos for this decade. But, you know, I think WrestleMania 31, you know, it's weird to say. I heard recently on XM Radio, you know, them giving a thumbs up, thumbs down. Some people gave it a thumbs down. But I think start off with that one. Just like WrestleMania 30, I mean, I think I give that one a thumbs up. You know, we all know the whole Sting thing, and sure, he should have won, and I agree with that one. That's a result I would love to see changed, Sting coming out on top. But WrestleMania 31, I think, you know, I defied a lot of people's expectations, obviously, especially with the end there, with the big cash in, the only time it's been done.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. I actually, you know, going through this, I mean, do you want to go with our favorite matches or MVPs at this stage of the game, or do you want to hold off?
What is your favorite, like what is your favorite match from this decade? It's obviously probably, you know, easy to pick, you know, because it's so fresh in your head. But I don't know about easy to pick, but I guess all of the matches are just fresh in your head.
Oh,
so
dude,
I think, what is your favorite match from this most previous decade?
I mean, we were just touching on it. The WrestleMania 31. The heist of the century, as Michael Cole would phrase it, where Seth freaking Rollins nowadays, he actually wrestled with Randy Orton earlier in the night, so he pulled double duty, you know, for this WrestleMania. And I remember at this point, because I remember it very well, because he was accompanied by the great Jamie Noble and Joey Mercury of J&J Security. And then obviously, you know, he had the Money in the Bank briefcase, you know, for WrestleMania. And it was originally a Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns, a name we're going to be talking about plenty this week. But it was originally scheduled Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns. And by the end of the night, you're getting to the finish line, and then Seth Rollins you just see the infamous, he's running down that super long, you know, entranceway, gets in there and does his thing, and he becomes the champion. And you can see the way I can still remember the way he threw the belt, like kind of like swung it. Like I've never seen somebody do it that way before, and I'll never forget that moment where like the way he kind of like swung that belt. So like for me, like Seth Rollins and that whole situation with that match, it to me in this you know abbreviated decade, because obviously WrestleMania 40 is coming up and we're not there yet, of this abbreviated this decade of WrestleManias. That moment, even though it was the earliest part of our breakdown here back in 2015, this to me I won't forget it, and I don't think I'll forget it anytime soon. It was just that memorable. I remember where I was watching that. It was just a cool moment.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely too. I think what I really liked heading into WrestleMania 2 was the thought that we knew Roman Reigns was going to win, but then I think 2 days prior it was announced Brock Lesnar had re-signed with WWE. I think they even broke it on ESPN. That's crazy to think because we talk about the hype of WrestleMania and where it is today. Thinking WrestleMania 31, I remember they had a lot of like ESPN interviews, like Triple H, Stephanie McMahon, Brock Lesnar, heading into it. So it still had a lot of that mainstream hype back at the early part of the decade. And I even remember actually WrestleMania 32. Jonathan Coachman was there because I was at WrestleMania 32, and Jonathan Coachman was there as part of covering it for Sports Center, not for the WWE. So they've had some of this mixed media, interpromotional stuff going on pretty much the good part of this decade. I think my favorite match is going to be very similar to you in the sense that it was highly affected by a surprise, and that was the return of the Hardy Boys at WrestleMania 34, or sorry, 33 in Orlando,
Right.
and the big ladder match in which they won and became the champions. I thought that was like my favorite moment of this entire decade when the music hit. A part of that because I knew the night before they had wrestled the Young Bucks at Supercard of Honor, right, in Lakeland, Florida, with the tag belt on the line. And then earlier that day, I had witnessed, not necessarily witnessed them, but witnessed a party that they were throwing in the streets of Orlando. They had a block party that was Matt and Jeff Hardy's like indie block party where they had like drinks and just music and a bunch of indie matches and stuff like that. And they had made an appearance. I didn't see them make the appearance, but I was told they had made an appearance, obviously, at this event. And it was like the Matt and Jeff WrestleMania block party, whatever, that they were hosting themselves. So to think just how, like we talk about, these things are in the works very far in advance, like the Cody Rhodes situation. But this was not obviously in the works that much. Like literally 24 hours earlier, like that would be like this weekend, me going to GCW or me going to Ring of Honor and seeing somebody in front of 10 people. You know what I mean? And I'm there because it's WrestleMania, and not knowing that this person before the weekend's out will be blowing the roof off of 70,000 people at Lincoln Financial Field
Yeah.
just the next day. Like me watching some indie show, you know what I mean? Or seeing some guy on the street and going, hey, it's Dalton Castle. Hey, he's wrestling at some local high school on Friday night. And then Saturday night, he's the Intercontinental Champion. Like something crazy like that. And that's what the Hardys was. Obviously, the Hardys are a big name, but, that's how cool that was. And I think WrestleMania 34 was one of my favorites of the decade overall. I mean, I enjoyed WrestleMania 32 because I was there. I know a lot of people, they didn't care for it too much. I didn't mind it. I know that obviously it was missing star power. Like it didn't have a healthy John Cena at the time. It didn't have Seth Rollins at the time, even though John Cena did make an appearance. And it is The Rock. The Rock did have a match, weirdly enough. Remember he took on it wasn't Bray Wyatt, right? Or was it the other one, Redbeard? I always call him Redbeard. That's his indie name.
Eric Redbeard, Eric
Yeah,
Rowan.
yeah. I think he took on Eric Rowan real quick at WrestleMania 32 after he set his name ablaze there when he came out. I did my WrestleMania 32. I didn't obviously like the result, the predictability of Roman winning at the end. A lot of people didn't care for that. But yeah, I think the Hardy Boys probably my favorite match of the decade. I really like the triple threat match at WrestleMania 37. Where we saw Roman Reigns, Edge, and Dan O'Brien. And I'll even actually say a sleeper match that makes me, I just thinking of it now, that Bad Bunny match. I mean, who wasn't entertained by Bad Bunny at WrestleMania 37?
Yeah, I mean, he put on a show for somebody who's not, he's not like he's training in the PC because he's doing these world tours. That dude barely has any time on his schedule, and he somehow fit WWE into that schedule, for his run or runs in the business. I feel like he's still got another run or two left in him. I think he has a good relationship with WWE, so I wouldn't be surprised, to see him there. And really quick too, I just want to circle back to WrestleMania 31. The match that I remember very well, obviously besides the heist of the century with Seth Rollins, was Undertaker and the late legendary Bray Wyatt, where Undertaker did win that match. That was a good match, and like we talked about last week, that was, that to me I thought would have been obviously we did the whole hindsight is 2020, blah blah blah, that whole thing, but that would have been the moment for me where I would have loved to have seen Bray Wyatt, end the streak and all that. So, but it was still a good match. Sting was there as well. Sting and Triple H. I mean, honestly, I'm looking at the card, like I forgot, like the Intercontinental Champion heading into that WrestleMania 31 was broadcaster now on SmackDown, Bad News Barrett, and he lost to Daniel Bryan in that ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship. And then just going through it, like the tag match for the women's division, AJ Lee, Paige versus the Bella Twins, like that was a quality match. The card itself I thought the card itself was pretty good, just looking back at it. So I just wanted to touch on that, especially with all the stuff going on. That's the Bray Wyatt documentary came out, so that was, obviously I'm rocking some Bray Wyatt gear tonight. If you can't see it, I'm wearing the gray Let Me In shirt. So I'm all in my feels about Bray Wyatt after watching the documentary this week. So I had to make sure I brought that into the chat tonight, because I did watch that documentary really quick, and I just wanted, I know you haven't had a chance to watch it yet, so I won't spoil it too much, and in case some of our listeners and viewers haven't seen it. But it's a highly recommended show. Just take 2 hours out of your day, or somewhere, and watch it. It's well worth the 2 hours. I was able to get through it. I got through it just shortly before recording our podcast this week. I was able to sneak that in, and I was blown away. I mean, Undertaker did a great job narrating it. There was some great moments in there, and the thing that I will say kind of that got me is I do feel like Bo Dallas in that aspect. Taylor Rotunda. Bray's little brother, because I know the feeling. I lost my older brother, so like him talking like Bray, him talking about his brother, it hit me. So it kind of, I got my feels a little bit, because it just makes me think. I put myself in his shoes, and we could put ourselves in each other's shoes, because we have that unfortunate thing in common where you lose somebody unexpectedly at such a young age. So. It was a combination of things. Like I loved Bray Wyatt as a performer, and just seeing all the different stories, and just hearing the stories from other wrestlers, and seeing how much of a great father he was and everything like that. It was really good in all aspects. It's going to get you in your feels, so just be aware of that. And then there's a little Easter egg. I'm not going to say anything else, but there is a little Easter egg. So make sure you watch till the end. There might be something coming down the pike from the famous Rotunda family. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, there's been talk about that for a little bit now, obviously continuing some of those stories. It's crazy to think you're talking about Bray Wyatt and The Undertaker at WrestleMania 31. Since the streak ended, and in this decade, Undertaker had 5 matches. Crazy thing, because when the streak ended, people thought, well, that's it. He's done here.
Yeah.
But 5 matches following that, right? And essentially could have had 6. He didn't appear at WrestleMania 35. He appeared the next night. But he to, I think, attack Elias, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, he had 5 matches in that decade, which is crazy, because you think, obviously, like when streak ends, he's wrapping it up. But he had a lot more left in him.
And by the way, for WrestleMania 40, I mean, there's reports that are circulating the internet and on social media that I'm not expecting Undertaker to be in a match, but in some way, shape, or form, he's going to be part of the festivities. So it'd be another WrestleMania where we're going to see.
Probably. I mean, that's not a surprise. I mean, come on, that would be part of the festivities. Like, they play his music, he comes out, he salutes the crowd. I mean, Hulk Hogan can do that. Anybody can do that. I mean, they did that with, obviously, WrestleMania 30. We all remember the big summit with The Rock and Stone Cold and Hulk Hogan. Maybe something like that. Maybe like a kickoff thing. I mean, Hulk Hogan actually was part host. Remember, he was with Alexa Bliss at WrestleMania 35. So We've had that kind of stuff before. I'm
curious to see how it works, though. I'm curious to see what if all that
Hulk
information.
WrestleMania 37 with Titus O'Neil. Forgot about that as well.
Yeah, Titus. Yeah,
a lot of Hogan.
Yeah, no, yeah, Hogan still gets he still he still transcends the business even to this day. So I mean, yeah, but Taker, going back to Taker, I think obviously he's not going to wrestle, but. Yeah, I think I don't know if it'll be a Hogan-like appearance, because I feel like there's going to be more to it. But if Taker's there, Taker's going to be involved in some way, shape, or form. I think it'll be cool. I'm just I know we're going to talk about the main show coming up, WrestleMania 40, in a little bit, but it's one of those things where I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Taker, but obviously the bloodline and everything, but. Regardless, we'll get to that in a little bit. Who is your MVP? I have to ask you, who's your MVP of this time frame?
Yeah, it's hard to think. Obviously Roman Reigns, he was champion at WrestleMania 37, 38, and 39. And obviously he was in the championship match at 31, 32. He was in the main event of 34, 33, 34.
You're taking the low
Uh,
hanging fruit.
but I'm not going to go with that. I mean, Bray Wyatt actually was, involved in a lot of stuff. He was at 31. He was involved at 32. Had a full match with the championship of Randy Orton at 33. He teamed up with Matt Hardy in the pre-show, the Battle Royal, I think, at 34. 35, if I'm not mistaken, he wasn't there at all. 36, obviously, we all know what could have been against John Cena. 37, he returned after having been cut, and then 37, he was still there regularly. And then he lost, and that's actually his last appearance at 37. And then he was released later that summer, and then he came back to what we thought was going to be a 39 appearance last year. I don't know. It's very difficult. I mean, Seth Rollins had a good run during this period. Triple H even had some good matches. Obviously, Sting, Seth Rollins, Batista. So yeah, he had some guys. This one's a tough one. Who you're going to go with? MVP of this decade. Like the other ones were easy because there was solid guys. Undertaker, Stone Cold, Hulk Hogan, real good flag bearers. But really, yeah, I mean, I don't want to. Is Roman Reigns really the low hanging fruit? I mean, he was involved in everyone here.
Dude, it is the low hanging fruit because
even his return from leukemia, right, at WrestleMania 35, where he was a good guy.
Well, he's going to be breaking the record for WrestleMania like main event appearances and stuff because they're counting. Michael Cole said it on Raw this week. They're counting night 1 and night 2 as 2 separate appearances essentially because even though it's the same WrestleMania weekend, but that's neither here nor there. I'm not going to get too technical about it.
Seth Rollins so Seth Rollins, can he get counted for 2 WrestleMania appearances at WrestleMania 31? Because in all honesty, that championship match and his match earlier in the night would have been Saturday, one would have been Sunday. So, in the old style, it was just one night, but in that style, it's 2 appearances, right? Yeah. In the new style. But yeah, who are you going? I'm going to go Roman Reigns. I mean, who are you going with?
Yeah, I mean that it really is the low hanging fruit because of everything that he's accomplished. I'm not going that direction. I'm actually going with one of his tag team opponents this coming weekend for WrestleMania 40, and you mentioned his name already, Seth freaking Rollins.
That's not Roman Reigns' tag team opponent. Yeah. His opponent, yes, his opponent, not his partner. You're right.
Yeah, tag team opponent. Yeah, yes. He's going to be facing in the main event of night 1. Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins, with his cousin The Rock as his partner, obviously. Yeah, I mean, for me, Seth Rollins is kind of the easy choice for me in particular. He's been the workhorse, minus the injury bug that got him a couple times here or there. But he's been a constant in WWE, throughout this time. Like he's just from his days with the Shield, all the way up to all the different. He was he was kind of like the corporate guy at that point. He had J&J Security, like like I mentioned earlier. Like he's evolved so many times. Like his character his evolution of his character has been, I feel like hasn't been done by very many during this time frame, other than maybe a Bray Wyatt, the late great Bray Wyatt. But for me, like I would have to go with Seth Rollins because of everything that he's done, but also all the character changes and character arcs that he's gone through. And he's been a heel, a face, a heel, and a face. Like he's switched over so many times. And for me, like, yes, Roman Reigns, he's been the champion for 1,300 days at this point, something like that. So it's been a long time. And
Seth Rollins hasn't been involved in the Shield at all, other than I think the one-off. But other than that, the Shield has been broken up this entire decade when you talk about him. Like Seth Rollins, Randy Orton.
I'm just going back, since his entire time in WWE, because from the beginning, from the Shield.
Well, if you're talking this decade, Seth Rollins took on Randy Orton at WrestleMania 31. He was injured at 32. At 33, he took on Triple H. 34, he was in the triple threat with Finn Balor. And was it The Miz, right, for the Intercontinental Championship?
I think it was.
The kick off the show, which was a great match. Might have been the match of WrestleMania 34. He had like the crystal blue eyes and the full white suit. WrestleMania 35, he came in as a Rumble winner and beat Brock Lesnar to kick off the show. WrestleMania 36, if I'm not mistaken, he took on KO in that street fight match. WrestleMania 37, I'm trying to think what was his involvement at 37.
I can't
I can't.
remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Did he have involvement? You'll have to look that one up. I know 38, Cody Rhodes, right? And then last year at 39, Logan Paul. I'm trying to think. WrestleMania 37. What is
So I'm looking at the card for 37. Let's see. He was in a match with Cesaro,
okay.
which is a good match because obviously Cesaro is a great worker as well. So
Yeah, so going backwards, it's Logan Paul, Cody Rhodes, Cesaro, Kevin Owens, Brock Lesnar,
he's had some names.
Finn Balor and Miz, uh, Triple H, and he kicked off the decade against Randy Orton.
To me, I mean, he's probably my favorite wrestler of this time frame. From 31 to 39, so 2015, to now to present. I think to me, he's consistently, even though he was a heel, I loved his character. Like Seth Rollins, he's one of those heels that like he's so good at being a heel that you have to root for him. Like that's just how he's always been for me. So yeah, Seth Rollins is the easy choice. And just a quick little factoid. I know I've mentioned this on previous episodes. Talking about performers of a certain decade. He won the most popular wrestler in 2015 and in 2023. So he actually, technically, he is the reigning PWI most popular wrestler right now, technically speaking. And like I said, he's just been a constant in the business. He, to me, when my fandom was like, man, we got to get better here. Like the product wasn't great. I could always count on Seth Rollins to put on great matches, no matter who he was with or on the microphone. Like he's just so entertaining and always has been. He is going to go down in my book personally, and he's still got a lot of work to do. I think he's still got a lot of work left to do in the ring. Where he's going to go down on my Mount Rushmore probably someday. That's how much I respect and I appreciate what he's done.
What was your favorite WrestleMania of this past decade?
31 because
31?
of the heist, man. Yeah, I know it's low hanging fruit there because of the heist, but yeah, to me that was the moment that I won't forget anytime soon. It was a combination of a really good card. I felt like, I mean, you got to see Stinger in there. I know, like you mentioned earlier on, like it would have been cool to see Sting win that match against Triple H, but whatever, it was still cool. It was still a decent length match for guys that are past their prime at that stage of the game, and and obviously they're both retired from in-ring competition. Sting most recently, and Triple H, he's got the business suit on. He's more known as Paul Levesque now, not really.
Well,
Triple
he
H.
essentially had the business suit on then too, though.
Well, yeah, but I mean, at this point, he's full on. Like, he's not going back in the ring, obviously, ever since his medical issues and stuff. But I mean, this entire card was pretty good. And it was just funny to look back and say, man, the guy that's on commentary, Wade Barrett, was the Intercontinental Champion on this WrestleMania. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was kind of the birth of Ronda Rousey as she came out, with The Rock there later on in the show, Stephanie and Triple H, Rock and Ronda Rousey. That was a cool, allude to then what we'd see 3 years later with her main eventing WrestleMania, 4 years later, her main eventing WrestleMania with Charlotte and Becky. Obviously, I'll say this much, I'm not going to talk about it really more than just this. I think WrestleMania 36 had the potential to be an amazing WrestleMania with all the stars involved because you had the good guys that you were interested in, the young guys. So it wasn't just an old person show. But think about it. You had John Cena, Undertaker, both scheduled for that show, and Goldberg, right? So if you want nostalgia, you had John Cena, Goldberg, and Undertaker all scheduled for that show. And you also had Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, and at the same time, you did have the return of Edge, right? So you had Edge come back for that show. So you had the chance of like some interesting matches. And one thing that definitely gets forgotten about at that WrestleMania because of the fact that it will always be whatever it is, in the COVID era. But, the reason it had the potential is there's some things about that WrestleMania that no matter what you say about what you like about it, there's some things that you're like, wow, that had a chance to be big. And it was big, right? Remember how big it was for Dolph Ziggler to take on Otis for like the right for Mandy Rose, right? That was like everyone was like loving that story. And I think somebody even said the pop that was going to get at the end when Otis beat Dolph and he was going to kiss Mandy Rose in front of the stadium full of people. Like, it's hard to believe because that's kind of forgotten about now. But at the time, you're like, oh, yeah, I forgot that was like Dolph Ziggler versus Otis at WrestleMania wasn't a throwaway match. We were like invested in that like love story thing with Mandy Rose and Dolph Ziggler and that that whole thing, like everyone was going to go crazy for Otis at that WrestleMania. Like he was so hot going into that WrestleMania. Obviously that stuff kind of gets forgot about, but that WrestleMania had obviously potential. Seth Rollins versus Kevin Owens, Edge versus Randy Orton, and like I said, John Cena, Bray Wyatt, The Undertaker,
Yeah.
Goldberg, Brock Lesnar,
Yeah.
all on that card. You know what I mean? AJ Styles on that card. And then obviously the crowning of Drew McIntyre, which would have been something like to take you back to like the WrestleMania 20s, where it's not just a Royal Rumble winner like Seth Rollins holding the belt again. It was literally like the crowning of somebody who was like it was like Daniel Bryan in a way, where like that was his one moment. It's not like this year, obviously. Like if Cody Rhodes even wins, I feel like Cody Rhodes is a bigger name as of right now, right? And in previous years, Roman Reigns winning the belt or Seth Rollins, it was like repeats. If Finn Balor wins at WrestleMania, it's like he's already won the belt before. And if Drew McIntyre wins at this year's WrestleMania, he's already been there before. But at that time, that was like Drew McIntyre. That was like his year. He'll never have like a year like that again, because you'll never be new again, right? You'll never be the Daniel Bryan of WrestleMania 30. In the future, if Daniel Bryan would have beat Edge and Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 37, it would have been great, but it wouldn't have duplicated. There's only one first, right? There's only one first time. And if you were to rewind to WrestleMania 35, you wouldn't think that WrestleMania 36 would be Drew McIntyre main eventing. But you had that, like where it was his time, his moment to come from like he'll never be champion to main eventing WrestleMania and winning it, similar to like Daniel Bryan, like his moment from all of that of just and there's lots of things like Kofi Mania is very similar, where like 1 year earlier you're thinking this guy's going to be a mid card for life. He already has been a mid card for life. He'll never break this, and then 1 year comes where it just clicks right at the right time, and all of a sudden Kofi Kingston is world champion at WrestleMania 35, and not 1 minute prior to the start of Kofi Mania did anyone ever think that was possible. And just like before Drew McIntyre won the Rumble, leading into the Rumble, people thought Drew McIntyre was gaining steam. But if you were to get like a month or two before that Rumble, Drew McIntyre would have just been what he is every year, just a middle of the card. This is the equivalent of if next year Baron Corbin is holding up the belt at the end of WrestleMania, being crowned the champion. That's kind of what this is to me with Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania 36. Like just wow, that was just a snowball out of nowhere. Like momentum just started going, and Baron Corbin all of a sudden is a favorite to win the Rumble, and then Baron Corbin's going to WrestleMania, and Baron Corbin's holding the belt as the confetti rains down. Like just that snowball effect. But WrestleMania 37 I thought was great for what it was, as good as it was. I thought it was actually pretty decent too, because the card itself was very weak. It was still right in the middle of COVID stuff, but the matches I think delivered on a much higher end than I thought they would. But yeah, I think WrestleMania 33 ended up being my favorite, and it's crazy to think because they're coming off a year where they got a quote unquote 100,000 people in Dallas, and now they're coming to Orlando, which isn't even the biggest city like in the area. Tampa's bigger, right? So it's in a smaller, not even an NFL stadium, like more like a bona fide college bowl field. And they put on a great show, even though it's like 30,000 less people than it was the previous year, right? And like I said, it seems like kind of a downgrade from like Jerry's World and 100,000 people. They put on a better show. They put on a better show the following year, and I can't help. I'm a sucker too, having been at a lot of these WrestleManias in this decade. Nothing really beats wearing like shorts and a t-shirt to a WrestleMania outdoors. When we talk about this year's WrestleMania, that's a completely different thing. But it really just felt.
That's not happening.
It just felt like a vacation. It felt like, and the set. That is one thing. And then that at the time I thought this is awesome, and it's held up. I think without a doubt, and maybe you'll disagree. Was that the set of the decade, WrestleMania Orlando?
I'd say yeah. I think it was a pretty good set. I know you're bigger into the whole sets than I am, so I don't really look at the aesthetics of it as much as you do. But I will
with
say
the roller coaster looking ramp and the universal ball, and then even above the ring, which I can already tell you as a preview for this year, above the ring, it just literally looks like just like the Saudi Arabian, just generic kind of thing they could do setup, right? But that year they did the thing where they had the actual ring above the ring with the ring ropes. You know what I mean? Looking like a fake ring above the ring. I thought that was just. Awesome.
I know you're bigger. Like I said, you're bigger into the sets than I am. Like I don't. I mean, as long as the matches are good, I'm okay with the sets. I know you're. I want to see some good pyro. Obviously, I love pyro. But
I mean, So to you, WrestleMania 33 with the Universal Ball and the unbelievably long rampway, because it had a hugely long rampway. And I remember too, it even had like, remember it had like when Randy Orton was coming down, it had like the snake going down the ramp. You're
Yes.
saying that you'll take or leave that with the one from WrestleMania 35, which was essentially just a large Sony Bravia screen.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't. I don't. It doesn't. For me, it doesn't make it less entertaining. I guess. I mean, I know the aesthetics. I know the aesthetics. You know, I know you look at that a little bit more than I do per se. As long as it's entertaining, like that's the biggest thing for me. Like,
Yeah, I know, but I just think because we watch Raw every single week and we watch SmackDown, we get some of the same things. We
but
got to
dude,
get some uniqueness.
I love the old sets from back in the Attitude Era. Even the most basic, like like those just basic sets where it was just like a big screen and a small little entranceway, like something super small like that, or I mean, I guess like I even liked like the fist from SmackDown back in the
Well,
day. Like those.
I don't. It doesn't have to be elaborate. I mean, WrestleMania, I do like elaborate, but it doesn't always have to be elaborate. It just has to be different and unique. That's really all I care about. I think like the set that they had for Raws the past couple of weeks when they had it in Chicago and they sold the whole place out, so they had like the smaller Raw set. I thought that was cool just because it was different than it was the week before. That's all. I mean, it just was a screen,
What?
but it was cool
And
because it was
here's the
different.
thing. That smaller setup too is just a testament to, and they put it on the graphic for Raw this
Yeah,
past week of the consecutive sellouts on television, which has been really good
yeah.
lately. So when I mean I don't I guess we'll have our brief little AEW portion here. Like AEW obviously has been struggling with attendance, and they've had some Will Ospreay classic matches on television. WWE's not having that problem right now. They're box office. They're drawn everywhere they go. The places are hot. It's a great time. It's not only a great time for the WWE universe or WWE, but it is a great time for wrestling fans as a whole because I still watch AEW. I'll still watch Will Ospreay put on classics, but like WWE is it hasn't been this hot in a long time for me personally. Like it's it brings me back to the almost the glory days for me as growing up in the 90s of like the way the Rock's cutting promos, like just the blood, like everything. And again, me, I'm not the biggest blood guy because like I've talked about this before, like John Moxley, I don't need to see blood every single match kind of thing. But like just the subtle blood every so often, I think is kind of cool, and I think it really builds the intrigue to this WrestleMania matchup between the Bloodline and Cody and Seth. So I'm the WWE's hot right now. Like I'm on fire for it. I've been this excited for WrestleMania. I can't tell you how long it's been. Like I'm pumped for this.
I think last year, you got to admit though, coming back, WrestleMania 39. I mean, come on now, that was a sweet set, right? And I'm just saying, WrestleMania 35. You can say what you want. That was the most boring set. I'm glad there's other people out there. I see them on Twitter. Boring as hell set for WrestleMania 35. I will say it's crazy because the last time they were in New York City before that, I think probably one of the best sets of all time. Definitely the top 5 with the Statue of Liberty above the ring and the Brooklyn Bridge and all that stuff. And
See,
I just think WrestleMania, that's part of the show. That's why WrestleMania 36 sucks. That's why, because it's more than just matches on paper. It's the whole presentation.
Dude, you don't need to have an elaborate set to make it a WrestleMania. Like for example, like I don't even care if this set is quote unquote the most boring. You're gonna have Lil Wayne dropping his new single at WrestleMania this weekend as they teased on Raw this week. Like stuff like that. Like I don't need something elaborate. Like as long as the entertainment value is there and you're getting the entertainment value with Lil Wayne dropping his new record.
So you're getting the entertainment value with Lil Wayne. I'm getting the entertainment value with the set. I think WrestleMania 30. So WrestleMania 33. My favorite WrestleMania of that decade, WrestleMania 31, your favorite WrestleMania from that decade. Some great moments, obviously, in that decade. Cody Rhodes returning, Cody Rhodes going for the belt. We saw a lot of Bray Wyatt. We saw a lot more Undertaker than we thought. We just crazy, and we saw women main event essentially twice. Four of the 5 WrestleManias we talked about were 2-night WrestleManias. That's crazy to think that about half of them at that time were 2-night WrestleManias.
Yeah.